Welcome into a live edition of the Inside Scoop. We are broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee. I am your host, Josh Newberg. We got so much going on in official visit world that I wanted to go live today. We're going to swing it around from school to school to school. We're going to hit on a bunch of them. We're going to talk Georgia, Alabama, USC, Miami, UF, Ohio State, LSU, and more. Like I said, it's a loaded weekend, so it's a loaded show. Make sure, though, that you guys are subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel. I love when we go live. I love having you guys in the chat. Let me know where you guys are from. Where are you watching? We're going to get into it. But first, let's take a look because we have changes. We have big changes to the top 10. Here it is. The Trojans are back in the number one spot. LSU had held it down for a couple weeks, but USC is back. Remember back in March, they were all over the number one spot. They faded a little bit, but we're going to talk about it. A 5-star commitment this weekend, actually on Friday, for the USC Trojans. Mark Bowman commits to USC, pushes USC into that number one spot. LSU 2, Ohio State, they're getting it going. They're at number 3. Ohio State really hasn't even fired it up quite yet. I mean, they do have double-digit commitments, but they're at number 3. I expect more. Notre Dame having a great offseason at number 4. Georgia at 5, looming. They are in position to fight for that number 1 spot. A&M at 6. Obviously, Miami with the addition of Jackson Cantwell vaults them into the top 10 at number 7. Then you got Alabama, Clemson, and Oregon. And Oregon's really been fading. I mean, at one point, you guys remember, Oregon was our number 1 team in the industry team rankings early on. Then they fell to number 2, 3. Now, after the decommitment of Richard Wesley earlier in the week, Oregon fades to number 10, but I'm not so convinced they're going to stay at 10. I think Oregon's got some plans. We're going to talk more about it. But I want to start this show, and hey, you guys, thank you for being here. This is a live edition of the Inside Scoop. Let me know in the comment section, do you guys like the lives? Do you like the tapes? Does it not even matter? I want to know your opinion. Let me know in the comment section below. All right. I want to start with Georgia. Now, Georgia had a huge weekend. They had double-digit visitors on campus. You can go to Dogs HQ for a whole rundown. But on Saturday, the Georgia Bulldogs added their 11th commitment of the 2026 class. That was when defensive lineman from Norcross, Georgia, Carter Lucky committed. He goes 6'5", 270. He's a defensive lineman. He's the brother of star tight end Lawson Lucky and the son of former UGA player Mike Lucky. So the red and the black, it runs deep in this family. Carter Lucky is now a dog. He's UGA's second defensive line commitment, joining JUCO standout Seven Cloud. So a nice addition to a loaded visit weekend for the Dogs. Speaking of visitors, Ressie Manziel was supposed to be on the show. He was unable to make it. He's currently on the field at a camp, but I spoke to him this morning, and he told me there is some buzz around 5-star wide receiver Cedarian Morgan. He's been considered a longtime Alabama lean, but Rusty said UGA made a move this week. And really, they've been making a move all offseason. James Coley, wide receiver coach, and the staff, they made a bunch of visits to see him this spring. Now he's currently on campus in Athens, wrapping up the visit as we speak, and we are hearing some buzz. Can't wait to read more on Dogs HQ from the weekend. Now, got a few other notes on some intel on 5-star tight end Caden Prothro. Boy, was he on campus at the right time if you're the Dogs. Now, of course, Georgia got the unfortunate news that tight end Mark Bowman was not going to be committing to the Dogs. He was going to be committing to USC. But right on cue, Caden Prothro, 5-star tight end out of the state of Georgia. He's from Bowden, Georgia, and he's been at the top of that tight end board for a while. Well, he's also maybe on the wide receiver board. He goes 6'6". Some feel he could play that X position at wide receiver. But nonetheless, Caden Prothro definitely coming into focus with the news that Mark Bowman is off the board. Xavier Crowell was on campus, another 5-star prospect. He, too, is from Alabama, and he's another one that Georgia is trying, much like Cedarian Morgan, trying to turn the tide, for lack of a better term. All right, also on campus, another 5-star, Isaiah Williams. He's a major flip target. He's committed to Ole Miss, but he's the On3 industry number 1 overall linebacker, and he's on commitment number 5. Yeah, that's right. Commitment number 5. Now, he's from Leesburg, Florida. He's been committed to Florida State, Louisville, a couple others. I don't have them all in front of me, but he's on commitment number 5, so we'll see. I actually think I think Isaiah Williams is going to end up a dog. Don't hold me to it, but that's just my gut feeling. Another flip target on campus is Devin Carter. He's quietly taking some visits. You guys remember Devin Carter, one-time FSU commitment, decommitted, committed to Auburn. He's been quiet, but now he'll take a few OVs, and Georgia is the first. Just watch that name, Devin Carter. All right, another priority target on campus was edge Kamari Brooks. UGA went to do an in-home visit with him this past week. Now this weekend, he's on campus. It's sounding like it's a two-team race here between Bama and Georgia. Next weekend, he's going to be at Bama. So this weekend, Georgia, next weekend, Bama. To me, that's always the recipe for a potential commitment coming off those two visits, especially when you've got it kind of narrowed down to two teams. You take those visits back to back. You're already in summer. What else are you waiting for? It's time to commit. What do you think, Georgia fans? You guys talk to me. How are we feeling about this weekend? How you feeling about Caden Prothero now that Mark Bowman's off the board? How you feeling about Justice Fitzpatrick? He's a big name out of South Florida that UGA's been leading for. You guys talk to me, comment section below. Big weekend for Georgia recruiting. All right, now we're going to turn our sights to Tuscaloosa, where Alabama has the 8th ranked class in America. Only 5 commitments, but we remember what they did last summer. So let's bring in Andrew Bone, Bama Online, our first guest of the show. Andrew, we had some big names on campus. We're going to start with a pair of wide receivers. We know Alabama's in the market for an elite wideout or 2 or 3 this cycle. So let's start with Ethan Booby Feaster. I mean, the amount of teams that have been mentioned with Booby Feaster, it kind of changes, but the one constant is Alabama. How do you feel about this visit now that it's Sunday and we're starting to end?
Yeah, I think Bowie had a great weekend in Tuscaloosa. Yeah, he shared a lot of photos. He was with Ryan Williams, Keelan Russell throughout the entire weekend. Keelan and him were actually 7-on-7 teammates last year. So they've got a connection there, and Bowie has been very high on Alabama for the last several months. You know, Alabama was one of those teams that jumped in on him late after learning that he was reclassifying from that 27 class to 2026, and really ever since then they've been after him pretty hard. Visited back in the spring. They had an in-home visit with him in late April, and now he's come back to Tuscaloosa for the official visit. It seems like things are going really well. We'll see kind of what happens over this course of the next month, as he still has some official visits coming up to some big schools. So when he makes that decision on July the 4th, I think Alabama's obviously still going to be in the race, but we'll see if they're going to end up being the choice.
One interesting flip target on campus is Kenny Darby. He's a wide receiver committed to LSU. But the interesting thing here is he's come out and said he's going to make a final decision in the beginning of July. So Kenny Darby on campus at Alabama. Am I reading this right? I mean, is Alabama going to flip Darby in the beginning of July?
We'll see. Yeah, he made a surprise trip to Alabama back in the spring, kept it very quiet. Alabama offered him back, I think it was in January, and this is obviously one of the top wide receivers in the state of Louisiana, had an unbelievable junior season, but he's been committed to LSU since November. He grew up an LSU fan, been to Baton Rouge several times. I think it's going to be a pretty uphill climb, but Alabama being in this race, this late, I think that says a lot about the this coaching staff. Coach Shep, who's recruited him, went down and saw him during the spring, and he seemed to have a great time in Tuscaloosa. But it's hard not to have a good time on official visits. You don't often find recruits who say they had a bad weekend on any campus when they take these OVs. So we'll see what happens with Kenny Darby, but it definitely seems like Alabama's in it. If I had to pick today, I'd still lean him sticking to LSU, but we'll see. He's still got a month to go, but the official visit to LSU on June 20th could potentially seal the deal there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's flip to the other side of the ball. One of Bama's top safety targets, Jet Washington, on campus this weekend. How do you read this recruitment?
Well, I think it's tight. I mean, we've talked about it for several months. It looks like it's an Alabama-Oregon battle. Now, there's some other schools that are still in it. Ohio State, USC, they're going to get official visits, but it still seems like it's an Alabama-Oregon tight race. He's in Tuscaloosa right now. He came in a little late, arrived on Saturday morning, so he's going to spend all day Sunday, and he's really the only visitor that's still on campus and going to get a lot of one-on-one time with this coaching staff. And Alabama really isn't going after a lot of safeties in this class. Jet Washington's one, Gerard Edwards out of Maryland's another one. He's going to be on campus next weekend, so I think Alabama wants to see kind of where things stand with Jet after this weekend, if he's still going to take official visits, which we expect him to do. But this is a big weekend for Alabama with Washington, who's been one of their top overall targets since day one.
All right. Now, offensive lineman Malachi Lee is a massive offensive tackle prospect from the state, or from Hawaii, from the state of Hawaii. He's in Tuscaloosa this weekend. And I've kind of been talking with Steve, talking with Chad. I kind of feel like Alabama's the team to beat here. You agree?
Well, I think Alabama's done a great job with him since he made that first trip to Tuscaloosa back in the spring. It was actually his first trip to Alabama since Nick Saban was in town. And Coach Saban actually offered him 2 years ago in Tuscaloosa when he came to camp. And, 2 years later, comes back to Tuscaloosa to meet with the new staff and, really hit it off with Alabama offensive line coach Chris Kapilovich and also Courtney Morgan, Alabama's general manager. Was in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Seemed to have a great visit. Went out on the Lake Tuscaloosa with Wilkin Formby and a lot of those guys. So got a chance to really grow the relationship there. I do think that other schools are certainly high on the list. Michigan, for one, I think they've been there the longest. Georgia came off an official visit last month with the Bulldogs and really likes Georgia a lot. So I do think Alabama's in it. I think they're a top contender. I don't know if I would say they're in the driver's seat. I think it's very close. But I think the one thing in Alabama's favor right now is they don't have any offensive line commitment, or they don't have any offensive tackle commitments in this class. That's an area that they would like to add at least one or two, and Malachi Lee is certainly one of their top priorities in this cycle.
All right. So what was your biggest takeaway so far from this weekend? I mean, we hit on some names. There's a ton more on Bama Online. You guys can go there right now. Check out all the in-depth coverage. But Andrew, what's your takeaway from this weekend?
Well, it seemed to be good. You look at all the social media posts, all the excitement. You see all the different players that were involved, from Ryan Williams, who last week, every single recruit saw him on the cover on the new NCAA football game. You had Keelan Russell out there recruiting. Had a lot of that freshman class that was number 3 in the country that were out there recruiting guys throughout the weekend. Dejoun Lee. So being around those guys really helps. I think at the linebacker position, you had 2 of your top overall guys that were in Tuscaloosa, and Brandon Rouse out of Georgia, Sincere Johnson out of Ohio. So they don't have any linebacker commitments right now. They'd like to sign at least 2 guys, and those are 2 players that they are really pushing for. It seemed like they had a great time. Brandon Rouse has already come out saying that he felt like a priority to the Alabama staff, and really likes the standard, the culture, and seemed to have a great trip. I'm really intrigued to kind of see what Sincere Johnson has to say, because it has seemed like an Alabama Ohio State battle with him since February. Even though he grew up an Ohio State fan, he does have a family in Alabama. Of course, Ohio State's been the trendy pick for a long time, but being around guys like Justin Hill, who's also from Ohio, who chose Alabama last year over the Buckeyes, that certainly doesn't hurt. But he's going to make a decision later on this month, and we'll see how it goes.
Andrew, want to talk about a Bama target that wasn't in Athens this weekend. That wasn't in Tuscaloosa, but Cedarian Morgan was in Athens, and there's some buzz coming out about that. But why do you think Alabama's in a great spot for Cedarian Morgan, 5-star wide receiver?
Yeah, I think he grew up an Alabama fan. Whole family, all Alabama fans. He's an in-state kid. Alabama does not have a wide receiver commitment in its class. They only signed 2 wide receivers last year, so there's a need there. I think they've done a great job recruiting them throughout, really since last June, and that relationship started last spring. But when he got that offer after attending camp, they've been all over him. I think that other schools are certainly heavily involved. He came off that visit to Georgia this weekend. He's been to Colorado. He's got Auburn coming up. So they're certainly going to push hard. But I think with Alabama being that in-state school that he's always dreamed about playing for, I think that's a big reason why they are considered the team to beat. And they're also going to get him on campus June the 20th, the final weekend before the dead period hits, and then he makes that decision on July the 2nd.
All right. Busy weekend in Tuscaloosa, busy summer in Tuscaloosa. Andrew Bone, Bama Online. Thank you for stopping by this live edition of the Inside Scoop.
Thanks, Josh.
You guys can go find more on Bama Online. Really, really big weekend for the Tide. All right. Speaking of big weekends, we're going to talk some USC recruiting right now with We Are SC, Scott Schrader. Scott getting set up. Scott, the big news, obviously, it's not a big visit weekend necessarily for USC, but the big news came on Friday. News started kind of trending with Mark Bowman to USC, at least from, Steve Wiltfong's point of view. We did the Wiltfong whip round the day before. He said it was trending in USC's direction, but why this weekend? Why did Mark Bowman decide to commit to USC this weekend?
Yeah, I think that I'm still in the process of finding that out. It happened on the final 2 days of a Hawaii vacation for me, so I kind of took a little time off to make sure that we got our content out. But I don't really know what the timing specifically why it was this past week, but it was kind of going that direction. I think some of this, you know, whenever we're wondering why something is happening and it seems like it's been expedited, I always think it's NIL reasons. So, I haven't talked to anybody. I haven't got any feedback that that's the reason, but I'm thinking that in large part is what is going on.
So Mark Bowman from Mater Dei High School. It's great to see this pipeline now with he joins Tom Tapui as two commitments from Mater Dei High School down there in Santa Ana, California. Is this Mater Dei pipeline alive and well right now for USC?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm not sure there's going to be any more from the class of 2026, but USC's in pretty strong shape early on with Aaron Washington, Danny Lang, and some other guys at Mater Dei. So it was a few years to where it seemed like USC might not ever get a Mater Dei kid again. And you bring in some new people into the building, and like Chad Bowden, Chad Savage, and you kind of change the mindset on how your approach is going to be with recruiting, and here we are. And again, I'm going to go back to this. It's also there's a big boost in NIL, and whether people realize it or not, the general fan, NIL is driving where these elite prospects go. And I mean, maybe not the only reason, but if you're not in the arena with the big time NIL collectives, you're just not getting guys.
Right. Absolutely. So USC fans want to know, is NIL going to be enough to hold this class together? Because we've seen hot starts from USC before. This one definitely feels a little different because it's more Cali centric. Yeah. But do you think NIL can keep this class glued together?
Yeah, I think there's a limit on this because there's obviously offers from other places that are pretty significant as well. So I think if USC follows up this season like the last two, I think there's going to be some issues down the road. But overall, I think you're right. I think just based on the fact that a lot of these kids are from Southern California, they kind of look at themselves as the solution. The future of the program, even when I'm talking to class of 2027 prospects, I'm asking them, well, why do you think that USC can turn this thing around? And they tell me that they look to the class of 2026 and how USC is doing recruiting wise with those guys. So, I think NIL is going to be able to keep USC in pretty good shape with most of this class, if not all of it.
Okay, well, that's encouraging for Trojan fans. Now, when it comes to California recruiting, we saw Richard Wesley, the 5-star edge defensive lineman, reopen his recruitment, decommits from Oregon earlier in the week. Is he a prospect in the state of California that USC could add?
Right now he's not among those guys that are the main focus to close out the defensive line class. There's three guys they're really, really looking at closely right now and trying to finish with them, and Luke Wafel and KJ Ford. And I think Titan Davis is the third guy. I mean, you'll even notice that Kari Wilder from Sarah High School, really, really good local kid, doesn't even have USC among his official visits anymore for this month. So I think things are winding down there. But I think that otherwise, actually, I'm sorry, I just got distracted. But other than that, I'm not really sure what USC's got left on the table.
Yeah. What about in the state of California? I mean, who is there a chance that they could add even more home state talent to this 2026 class?
Yeah, I think that there probably are a couple of guys that are remaining. Yeah, you got Brandon Arrington that's still left, and he's coming in for an official visit. As of now, he was scheduled to come in for June 17th and the 19th, but USC's been doing some changes around with those visits. But he's still scheduled to come in and take a visit. And they're going to get to the point right now. The feeling at USC is that they're thinking they can maybe get this to 30 commits by the end of the month, and then go into the season, and they're going to continue evaluating and looking at guys. So they may still have 4 or 5 spots left as we head into the football season to kind of close out this recruiting class. But you never know how things are going to go. These official visits, and you start talking, and kids' interest kind of goes up. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
What will be, because I know we were texting earlier, and this isn't a big official visit weekend. Most campuses have big official visits weekends going on. Not saying that USC is doing anything wrong, but what is the schedule looking like for USC? When can fans expect that big official visit weekend of the summer?
Yeah, the next weekend will be that weekend. I think it'll be the biggest weekend. Maybe by the 20th through the 22nd might also be similar in size, but they're going to get off to a roaring start here on June 6th through the 8th, and so there'll be plenty to talk about next weekend from a recruiting perspective for sure.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. Scott Schrader, We Are SC. You guys do a phenomenal job. Thank you for stopping by the live Inside Scoop.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. I said it. We're going coast to coast on this show. So we went out to USC. Now we are going down to Gainesville, Florida. We're going to check in with Blake Alderman of Gators Online. Gators are having a massive visit weekend, and Blake is all over it. Let's bring him in. Look at Blake. You're out here working, huh? Good. Do we have volume from Blake?
Nope, that's me. My fault. I was muted. I'm out here in these trenches. Sorry. Had to mute it so you guys didn't hear all the cars revving up in the background.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're in Gainesville right now, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. So
right outside the football facility.
Exciting day, exciting weekend for the Gators. Let's get to it. There's a 5-star on campus, the #1 safety in America, Braylon Womack. Gators have been working hard on this one. What are you hearing coming out of the weekend?
I think Florida, and it's kind of the same you hear after any official visit, they feel like the visit was really well. But that's, again, a guy that's on the highest of visit highs. He really likes Vinny Sinceri. I think that he's done a great job recruiting him. They have a prior connection all the way back to when Sinceri was at Washington. So good chance for him to have that time around Sinceri again. Mom and dad were in town with Braylon, so they got to spend the weekend with the staff. So he's got a long list of visits still left to take. Florida was one of his first ones. So I feel like that's one where we'll see as he continues to take these trips. Ohio State has been viewed as that leader, and I believe they have his last visit there on that final weekend of June. So, I think Florida's probably in a better spot, you could say that, than they were heading into the visit. But again, it's going to be highs and lows as he continues to take these trips.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one prospect that I've been thinking about over the weekend is CJ Bronow, the corner from Orlando, Florida, that's committed to Nebraska. But Blake, I started doing the science in my head, and a cornerback who committed to Nebraska before UF really started putting the pressure on him. I mean, come on. Is Florida the team to beat here? Is this just a matter of time before Bronow flips?
I think it is. And I think that if he did flip, which, a guy from Florida made that early commitment, like we've seen the Florida math, like that's an early commitment. The distance from home starts to become more of a factor as we go on here. Florida and Florida State, I'd say that those are the two that are, if he flips, I think it's those two, one of those two. But right now I'm thinking if he does, it's Florida. I have a hard time seeing him stick with that commitment to Nebraska, but he will visit them. He's going to visit Penn State. He's going to visit Florida State after he's done over here at Florida. But I'd say that if he does flip, which does seem likely to me, at least in my opinion, I think it's to Florida. I think they've done a great job with him. Jerron Wilson, Florida's cornerbacks coach, has done an excellent job with him. Billy Napier's involved. I think it was like a 10.24 something that CJ ran at the Florida Relays, which is here in Gainesville for track. So once he ran that time, that's a fast time that it's like Florida was already recruiting hard, and they pushed down the gas even harder.
All right, I want to talk about the two big old defensive linemen, Vodney Cleveland and Jeraylen McCoy, that are on campus right now in Gainesville. But you're can you show us around the facility a little bit? I don't know if this is a good idea. But.
Yeah, so that's all the media guys over there. We're waiting, so we're go this way with it. There's the football facility out there.
Nice.
Came over here so that we're a little off in the cut in case it's loud. But parking lot's behind me from where the players park at. We're right out the facility. If you go down there to the main road and then you turn left at that, you'll go right to the swamp. So it's all kind of collected together. The O-Dome is over here to my right behind this building. So everything's kind of like congested in one spot. Awesome.
Well, I'm sure Gator fans will enjoy that. Who's the biggest name you guys are still waiting on to talk to? Or have they not really?
3 guys. It's pretty slow. Like they have guys that arrive later in the afternoon. So typically a lot of guys do leave from like anywhere between 12 and like 4:30, 5 o'clock. So I think there's only been 3 or so guys that have left to my knowledge right now. So we've still got the 16 names that were in town. We've still got double digits that we're waiting on. So it's going to be a long day.
All right, good. All right. Well, Vodney Cleveland, Jaraylin McCoy, who are you feeling better about now that this weekend's kind of coming to an end?
I'd still say Jaraylin McCoy. I was pretty bullish on Florida's chances going into the visit last time I was on the show. And I still think that I give Florida the edge. Texas is going to host him next weekend, and then he'll be at Ole Miss and then LSU. So, but I think Florida has done a really good job with him. He's got mom and dad and some family in town this weekend. So I'd say that of the two, I think Florida could easily land both of them. But I think that right now, Jaraylin McCoy seems more likely than Vodney Cleveland. I think it's Florida and Texas for like those are the two teams battling for both of those guys. But I think that right now, if I had to call my shot, I think that McCoy leaning to Florida, and I'd say that Cleveland more than likely leaning to Texas.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that would be a nice split. I'm sure, Gator fans obviously want them both, but if you're battling Texas and you can land one of the two, hey, it's not a bad deal. All right, so last week we had you on the show, and, we kind of talked about last weekend's visit weekend as, they were guys that maybe were long shots that Gators wanted to take a big swing at, but this weekend feels a little bit different. What's your takeaway? What's your gut feel from this weekend? Do you think that some of these guys that are on campus in Gainesville right now will end up being Gators in the end?
I think so. And I think when you look at the OV list top to bottom, whether it's, someone who gets a wild hair this weekend or, out of the visit or something like that, I think that whether we look back and we're looking into the later part of the season, we'll look back. And I think this is a weekend where Florida can easily land a lot of the guys that are on campus. This seems like a pretty positive group of players that I think Florida is in a really good spot for most of them, if not all of them.
Yeah, it feels that way to me as well. I think there's going to be some guys. Now, maybe we don't see the commitment happen in the first 24, 48 hours. Sure. Heck, it might be a couple months from now. You never know with these guys and their commitment dates, but I certainly think there's a few. Blake Alderman, Gators Online, we really appreciate you stopping by, talking some UF recruiting today on a live edition of the Inside Scoop.
Thanks for having me.
Live on scene. You got to love it. Blake Alderman, Gators Online. Glad we got him from 24/7. My man Blake is over here dropping info left and right since his arrival. All right, let's stay in the state of Florida. Let's go down to Coral Gables. We have Azubi Charles. Much like Blake Alderman, he is on site at Miami. Azubi, it's a 5-star weekend. Tristan Keys is on campus. What's the latest on a potential LSU flip target?
Yeah, I really do love where Miami stands with Tristan Keys, and a lot of people around campus, feel really good about, where they stand with him as well too. This weekend was his 3rd time down here this calendar year. Took 2 visits during the spring and then this official visit. And this was his first official visit, so Miami made a really, really good impression. And one interesting thing that I think he said was he's just waiting to find that program where his heart and his mind align, and that's where he's going to go. Obviously, he has that pledge to LSU, but Miami's doing what they have to do to keep their name in the mix. And I think this weekend was another step in the right direction as they continue to chip away. But I think this recruitment's far from over. Hurricanes really, really value Tristan Keys, and this weekend they showed him that and some. So I think Miami's in a really good spot with him heading out.
Yeah. And it just has felt like momentum's been building with Tristan Keys really ever since the commitment of Jackson Cantwell. It made all things Miami recruiting look possible after landing Jackson Cantwell. So I can't wait to see what Tristan Keys has to say as he departs his visit. Another big name on campus is Lamar Brown, defensive lineman, 5-star prospect. Lamar Brown, the experts think he's trending towards LSU, but what's Miami got to say about that?
Yeah, they're trying to take him out of SEC country, and in the middle of his visit, he actually tweeted, "Man, you guys got to stop sleeping on Miami, my recruitment." And hey, it's coming from him, not from us. So he's loving what he's seen. He's another guy that took a visit in the spring, and that kind of pushed his interest level in the Hurricanes. And then this official visit was just like, I wouldn't say the cherry on top because he hasn't committed yet, but it was pretty darn close to that with him just being wowed by all that he saw in Coral Gables. And hey, that staff is prioritizing him as much as anyone in that 2026 class. They already have the number one tackle in the country. They're looking to secure the number one athlete in the country as well. So another big time prospect that was down there in Coral Gables. I think the Canes made some good movements on this weekend.
Then we come to running back Derek Cooper from Miami. Derek Cooper, though, looking at all these other schools, what does Miami have to do to keep him home?
Yeah, it's gonna take a lot, but they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep him home. Obviously, they have a current running back committed in that 2026 class, Javian Mallory. But hey, they made it clear. They said, Derek, we want you and Javian to be, the guys down there in Coral Gables. Keep that South Florida swag in the backfield. And they're preaching to him just that, you don't have to go anywhere to be a superstar. You can do it in your backyard. And he's listening, obviously, but it's going to be a tough battle to keep him home with the likes of Georgia, Ohio State, Auburn, and a lot of teams pushing for him. But like I said with these other guys, this 5-star weekend was a big push for the Canes, and they showed him, everything and more.
All right. Miami surging into that number 7 spot in the top 10 rankings after landing Jackson Cantwell. Who else this weekend, though, are you feeling like Miami made a move with?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a guy committed to a Big Ten program, Michigan, and that is 4-star cornerback Brody Jennings. He absolutely raved about his time in Coral Gables. He said it's going to be hard for any school to top his experience down there in Miami this weekend. And obviously he's committed to Michigan, but he has a few ties to the University of Miami. His older brother played football here, and his sister currently runs track here. And he was probably the most excited prospect that I spoke with coming out of that visit. And he says Miami's in a really, really great spot, and he can see himself succeeding on and off the field here. So excited. He's the guy I'd say I'm most excited about, coming out of this weekend for sure.
All right, Azubi Charles of Kane Sport. He's on site reporting for us. Big news coming out of Coral Gables today. You guys go find the rest on Kane Sport. Azubi Charles, thank you. All right. Gonna miss that guy. Gonna miss that guy. All right, let's talk now about the Ohio State Buckeyes, the 3rd-ranked class in America. 13 commitments. This might sound crazy, though. I don't think Ohio State recruiting has really gotten going yet in the 2026 cycle. I know they're currently ranked 3rd, but I think they have a lot more to go. Let's bring in Mick Walker of Letterman Row. Mick, a huge weekend up there in Columbus. I mean, 5 stars all over the place. Let's start with offensive tackle Felix Ojo. We know the pursuit of Jackson Cantwell came up short, but where do you think Ohio State sits with Ojo?
I think they're top 2. I've heard Steve Wiltfong kind of echo the same sentiment. Top 2 with Texas heading into this visit. Now, I do think it's interesting. Ohio State seemed to make the play to get the first official visit, and he'll go to Michigan next week and then Texas before going to Oklahoma. I do think they wanted that first official visit. I'm not entirely sure, and I'm excited to kind of hear from Felix why they made that play. But I think it's them and Texas battling up at the top with Michigan, Oklahoma, probably even Florida down there in that final group of kind of a top 5, I guess, with him.
Ojo's recruitment is going to be a real battle. So is Savion Hyder's. And Savion Hyder, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago, I probably would have said Ohio State's maybe on the outside looking in. And I think I would have penciled him in to Michigan's class. Now, Michigan obviously still involved. Still, some people consider the favorite. But Ohio State and Tennessee have really made the Savion Hyder recruitment interesting. What's your feelings now that he's in Columbus?
Yeah, it's another one where obviously they have Savion Hyder on campus this weekend. Favor Key, a 4-star coming in next weekend, and then in 2 weeks they'll have Derek Cooper, who you guys talked about with the Zuby coming in.
Yeah.
But they made a very clear play to get Savion Hyder on campus for his first official visit. First guy coming on campus of any of the running backs. I know Ohio State's going all in on trying to land him in this class with Carlos Laughlin leading the way to assistant running backs coach Tony Johnson. They're going to make a big commitment to him when it comes to just pursuit relationships, but also I think they're willing to go pretty high when it comes to just dollars and cents on the NIL front, if that's what it takes to get Savion Hyder in the class. He's their number 1 target, and I think that's why he was on campus. I think they feel like they've made up a lot of ground this spring because they got him on campus again. Carlos Laughlin's been there just about every single opportunity he can be during the spring evaluation period. Brian Hartline even joined him, and we can talk about it later, Josh, but when Brian Hartline gets involved in recruitment, it's pretty good for Ohio State.
Yeah, it's usually a wrap. Speaking about good for Ohio State, linebacker Xavier Griffin decommits from USC. Everybody thinks he's a Bama lean, but one of the first visits he ends up taking is to Ohio State. Do you think that the Buckeyes have ground to make up on Alabama? And where do you think Ohio State really stands in this thing?
I do think they have ground to make up, but it might not be as much ground as we kind of see just from the outside looking in at this moment. James Laurinaitis was right there at Gainesville High School, I think, for a spring game a couple days after he decommitted. James Laurinaitis stopped by during the January, right after the national championship, the same day he saw Tyler Atkinson while in Georgia. They've been slowly and steadily building this relationship, building the relationship with his mother, building the relationship with the player, with Xavier himself, and just trying to chip away, getting this recruitment more and more. Obviously, like you said, Alabama has the ties. I think that the family ties, the proximity to kind of where he's at in Gainesville, but Ohio State feels confident they're in this one. And I'm excited to catch up with Xavier here in maybe about an hour or so to see where exactly they stack after this official visit.
Yeah. And let's move on to edge Luke Wafel. He narrowed his list of teams down to a top 4, top 5 last week. Ohio State makes the cut. They get him on campus this weekend. Where do you think Ohio State stands with him?
I'd say they're up there with Penn State. Obviously, his brother goes to Penn State. He's in Happy Valley, so that's going to help the Nittany Lions. But it's unique on a lot of these unofficial visits this spring. When you take them, there's different people like assistants or student assistants kind of leading guys around on their visits. When Luke Wafel and his dad came to Columbus, it was Mark Pantoni with him hip to hip the whole entire time. And Mark obviously handles a lot of the NIL stuff right now, but he's also a great relationship builder. He's been doing this for a long time. I imagine they spent some more time on this official visit. And like you said earlier, I think Ohio State has a lot of work to just kind of escalate in this class just because they don't have any defensive linemen committed. They have 3 offensive linemen, but I think they want another 3. So that you're talking about getting maybe 4 or 5 defensive linemen, another 3 offensive linemen. That's the meat and potatoes of your class where you're going to really build the numbers up. Right now, Brian Hartline's got his 4 wide receivers. They don't have any running back. Like, there's just a lot of room to grow up because there's some of those positions where you take large numbers. And Luke Wafel's a guy I think when it comes to the defensive line class, they would like to get him in there as kind of the cornerstone. But obviously Penn State, Texas, USC are kind of lining up to be big threats in that recruitment as well.
Yeah, and like I said, Letterman Row has a ton of info on there. We're not going to cover it all, but just I want to pick your brain on this a little bit. Who do you feel good about this weekend? Like if there is a player or two, maybe not the biggest names on campus, but if there's a player or two, do you think could end up being Ohio State Buckeye from this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, on 3, Steve Wilfong's already put in an RPM for Aaron Thomas to go to Ohio State. I believe the 3-star offensive tackle from Arizona. He seems to be trending towards Ohio State. He still has official visits scheduled to Florida State, where his dad played, in Texas and Texas A&M. If Ohio State can kind of get him to maybe cancel those visits or get him to kind of hold off and maybe make a commitment this week, I think the Buckeyes would love to see that happen. But I think they're in a great spot. Another guy down there, or not down there in the Sunshine State, but a guy from in the Sunshine State is Cam Brickell, the 3-star defensive lineman from IMG Academy. He doesn't really get talked about a ton. His only other official visits to Florida State here in a couple weeks, but he's visited Ohio State for the spring game. He's originally a Philly guy, so I think there's just some pull up there. And Ohio State loves to get these 6'2", like 300-pound-ish guys in the class. And so I think Cam Brickell, Aaron Thomas are the two I'm kind of circling the most and excited to kind of hear what's going on after this official visit.
All right, Ohio State fans, you guys can go check it all out on Letterman Row. Mick Walker, appreciate you stopping by this edition of the Live Inside Scoop.
Thanks, Josh.
Busy weekends from coast to coast. We're seeing it all. Let's talk about some of the biggest developments we've seen this weekend in recruiting. UGA adds an elite defensive lineman on Saturday. The Bulldogs added their 11th commitment of the 2026 class in the form of Norcross defensive lineman Carter Lucky. He goes 6'5", 270. He's the brother of tight end Lawson Lucky and the son of former UGA player Mike Lucky. So the ties to the Dogs run deep in this family. He's UGA's second defensive line commitment, joining JUCO standout Seven Cloud as the Dogs just start ramping it up. All right, USC, they land another 5-star. Trojans, they're number 1 again. The number 1 tight end in America. Mark Bowman committed to USC on Friday. A huge win for the Trojans to beat out Texas, Oregon, Georgia. Miami was also heavily involved in this one. And it looked like at times it was trending heavily to other schools. I mean, there was picks in for Texas. There was picks in for Georgia. But starting on Thursday, when we taped the Wiltfong Whip Around with Steve Wiltfong, he said this thing is beginning to trend in USC's direction. 24 hours later, Mark Bowman was committed to the Trojans. Another huge in-state pickup for USC as they are now back in the number 1 spot that they really held down for the first couple months of this cycle. Then they lost it. Oregon jumped in there. We saw LSU holding down the number 1 spot for a while, but USC is back in charge. All right. USC trolls Oregon. What am I talking about? Well, remember about 18, 20 days ago when Richard Wesley committed to Oregon, the 5-star edge out of the state of California. We broke down this commitment. You guys remember on a show about 3 weeks ago. I kind of broke down everything that I noticed in this recruitment, like the Jordan Travis highlights running in the background. And I thought that, here, watch this. That man's making millions of dollars, and he just jumped in a pool for a commitment with Richard Wesley, a 5-star recruit. Now, I thought that this commitment video was a little thrown together. Now it looks like this whole commitment was thrown together because it took 17 days for Richard Wesley to back off that commitment. Now, how did USC troll Oregon? Well, Dan Lanning did all this for nothing. And now Mark Bowman commits, so USC tweets this. Oh, we don't have it. Okay, well, USC tweeted a video of it's funny. We'll talk about it on the next show. Here it is. There it is. The cannonball, the cannonball meme. All right, let's talk about Jackson Cantwell and his toss. This is insane. I don't know much about chucking cannonballs, but Jackson Cantwell chucks this cannonball further than almost anyone in high school history. He actually came up 1 centimeter short. 1 centimeter short of the high school record for shot putting. This is shot putting for those of you that have never seen it live. Jackson Cantwell is an absolute unit, and he can throw a cannonball almost as, I don't know what those things are actually called. If you know, put it in the comment section below, but he really launches this thing. Committed to Miami. This shows a lot of strength, a lot of ability, and I hope he continues to do this on the college level. I think he is right there at Olympian status, or at least close to it. So, I mean, this man is going to be playing left tackle for Miami Hurricanes. It's going to be crazy. So there it is. Jackson Cantwell's insane toss of the cannonball. That's what I'm calling it. Anyway, those are the biggest developments of a crazy college football recruiting weekend. You guys let me know, how are you feeling? How are we all feeling as we head into official visit season, which then will lead us directly into commit season? Hey, thank you guys for being here. Hit subscribe if you're still hanging out with us. No reason not to be subscribed to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. I want to do these live shows every Sunday. I think we can cover a lot of ground. We can get guys in, get them out, learn a lot about these official visit weekends. So if you guys enjoy this and want me to do another live edition of the Inside Scoop, let me know in the comment section below. See you guys next Sunday.